AI is omni-use technology. That means it can do everything, but that doesn't mean we should use it for everything. Today, I want to show you my framework to decide if I should use AI to automate a certain use case or build a certain product. So we have three core ideas here. We have viability, which is, can we build and integrate it? This integration piece is often not looked at enough, I think. The building part is usually the easier one, especially in bigger systems, existing systems. Also, if you build your own product, that plays a big role. How will your product work in the whole workflow and the whole process? Then we have resources. So honestly, let's call this resource efficiency. Is there business value, right? So yes, I can implement a certain workflow, but is the workflow running often enough? Is the workflow important enough? Is the workflow business critical? What kind of leeway do I have with errors, right? So how close do we actually get to a good result, and is that worth it, right? This is kind of the same for any type of automation, really. So there's nothing new here in terms of AI versus no AI. It's always a matter of, ROI. And then capabilities. So is AI actually good at it, right? Often when talking to people, the idea is that AI can do everything just because, I don't know, some high-level influencer on LinkedIn told them that that was the case and that Model X killed Model Z again and killed Google and killed whoever. But often this is just sensational bullshit. I mean, it's just what we need to say in order to get any sort of impressions these days on our content. But I think in terms of capabilities, what it's really good at is 1, pattern recognition, 2, text generation. After text, the next kind of layer of capability is essentially images and then video. So I wouldn't really rely on images and I wouldn't really rely on video today. Obviously, this is something that changes the whole tool landscape, and that in itself is a challenge, is to keep up to date with what's out there and what's working. And I think that's where this FOMO, so fear of missing out, comes in, that influencers capitalize and say this new model is there and now it can do all these things that we couldn't do before. And while that's true, I would always take it with a grain of salt. And I think from my personal experience in applying the technology, what it's still best at is text, because that's fundamentally also what most models are trained on. So anything that has to do with text generation, we have a wedding speech generator, for example. We now have a bachelorette planning tool that pumps out a itinerary, which is also just text and tables, right? So any markdown formatting, any kind of report. I think if you have repetitive tasks that fall into this area of writing reports, writing text, there is where AI, as of today, is really good, or LLMs are really good. I'm mostly talking about LLMs, not purpose-trained models. And so that is really where I try to look first. How can we, especially for a proof of concept, how can we stick to anything that is text? No images, no graphs, nothing. Graphs can usually be tables or represented another way, which is obviously not amazing UX, but it lets you learn much faster, right? And so the idea here is just to only look at the things that make sense today, while keeping an eye on the landscape every 3 months or every month, whatever you want, how much time you have, to reevaluate use cases that weren't able 3 months ago, but are now getting closer to at least get to an 80% implementation, while assuming that the use case is good for an 80% implementation, right? Which is essentially also kind of a resource efficiency or viability, where if my use case is so critical that I need 99.9% accuracy, maybe this isn't the first use case you should start on. Maybe that's something for later, or maybe that's something for never, or maybe it's something for an 80% solution with tightly built-in human in the loop oversight. So that's another kind of area to think about. And overall, sticking to these 3 criteria as a kind of rule of thumb, in my opinion, is a good idea. But I'm also interested in how you evaluate what you want to build, or what you think is worth building and worth automating. And I'll feel free to drop that in the comments, and I'll see you next time. All right, cheers.